Back. That was sneaky. Okay, so thank you all for coming to this wedding reception. So, why television works? Okay. Hold on now. We'll get there. Okay, so, how television works. This would be a somewhat pointless topic for me to be presenting on to Cisco's service provider video divisions, because we all know how television works. In fact, I would hazard to say that we've assembled within Cisco probably the world's greatest concentration of experts in this particular topic. But did you ever stop to ask yourself why television works? It's the question we forgot to ask ourselves, and it's the subject of my presentation today. So who am I? My name is Pete Rye. I work in New Initiatives, which is part of the Office of the CTO. And as you can see, I've been in Cisco NDS for far too many years, working all sorts of areas in the television space. So let's start by defining some terms. What do we mean by television? Well, let's start with this word, video. It's a very important word for us because it's one of our top 5 priorities, as deemed by our senior management team. But is video the same as television? Well, clearly there are many ways to experience video that are not traditional television. So YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, Apple TV, all sorts of ways of seeing video that's not traditional TV. So what do we need to add or perhaps subtract from video networks to arrive at television? Well, we have a lot of sort of very overused and hackneyed phrases we often hear in this space. But they're a bit sort of vague and they don't really mean anything. There's no meat in those. So let's try and move beyond those kind of overused phrases. So what is it that makes television and makes it different from a video network? Well, it's this list. It's the hate list. It's the thing that technologists hate. It's the old school features. It's the legacy features. It's the things that go back all the way down to the dawn of television. And it's the things that technologists like us spend all our time trying to reinvent and trying to take out of the system. So what role do these things play? Are they on their way out? Are they about to die? And how do they define the way television works? Well, does television work? Let's start with the next word. Well, if you believe the wisdom of the Californian tech giants, then it doesn't work. It's on its way out. TV's about to be reinvented. We're about to enter a post-TV period. That's the kind of opinion we often hear quoted, and they've been signaling the demise of television for several decades now. But let's move beyond this kind of hype, and let's actually look at some real viewing data and see what the viewing data tells us. So this is the Nielsen Cross-Platform Media Report. It's one of the biggest and most well-respected reports in cross-media usage, and it specifically sets out to test what people are doing on all sorts of video networks. And the data for the latest report is very clear. The undeniable facts are that traditional television is still by far the biggest use case for consuming video in our world today. It stubbornly refuses to be replaced from its #1 spot. And despite the huge array of new devices and new service, boring old traditional TV still holds its own. In the US, 4.5 hours of every adult day is spent watching TV. That's a third of their waking time. US children spend 66% more time watching television than attending school. In the UK, 68% of all evening meals are eaten in front of the television. And that's not just true of adults. As you can see here, 18 to 34-year-olds, a slight increase in internet video, but no real inroads into traditional television. In fact, what you find is when those people get older, the traditional TV starts to come back into play. So, and it's not just static. Actually, this is a percentage, but viewing of linear TV is actually increasing year on year. So far from being in decline, we can see that traditional TV is robust and it's hardy. So at this point, you're probably saying, well, hold on, that's not right. That's not the way I watch television. And I think you're probably right. My guess is that people in this room watch very little traditional TV, and much less than ordinary people. That's because you are not ordinary people. You are techies. You are geeks. Some of you are dorks. You probably have a social circle that is much the same. Do not fall into the trap of simply extrapolating your viewing behavior to the population as a whole. It's a common mistake. Techies always make this mistake, but it's not good. It's data that reveals what's actually going on in real, ordinary people's homes. So that's where we must go, to real, ordinary people. So let's listen to some ordinary people, and let's listen to what they think about television.
I like to watch the movies on TV, reality TV.
ABC, NBC, CBS,
Oprah, Ellen.
Fox, Discovery Channel, TLC.
It's just to relax the mind, you know, have to not think about anything and just veg out.
It's comfort. It's a relaxing part of my night when I can go sit down and I do, like I told you, I do down General Hospital on the DVR, so I can sit there and do that. And it's really just my downtime at that point.
And just kind of a way to escape and not really think about anything.
So a common mistake that technologists make when they misread television is they put technology ahead of people. And it's only when you actually understand people and how they go about making choices in their homes that you can really understand the power of television. And we can make another observation. Technology changes all the time, but people don't really change that much. They have the same wants and desires as they've always had. If you could take these two ladies who are separated by several hundred years and take them for a coffee in Starbucks, you'd find that aside from reading, they probably both enjoy other forms of entertainment. They probably want to be fit and healthy, spend time with their friends and family, fashionable clothes, makeup, perhaps they're even looking for husbands. They'd have a lot to talk about and a lot to share. People are actually very simple, and the things that were true 100 years ago will be true 100 years from now. So let's look at this list again, the hate list. And let's try and put this in the context of what's happening in people's homes and understand how TV is driving millions of viewers every night. These things exist and persist, not for legacy reasons, because they have proven value in addressing a central dilemma every day, and that is the dilemma of choosing. So choosing is seen as a positive force in Western liberal societies. It's seen as a right. And we are all sort of given a copious amounts of choice points in all sorts of things, in retail, in finance, in education, and for some reason hundreds of different types of coffee. But lots of research has shown that unclear choice, unnecessary choice, and too much choice is really difficult for consumers. In his book, The Paradox of Choice, Barry Schwartz examines this dilemma in a great detail. And what he shows is that less choice, or reducing choice rather, leads to less anxious and happier consumers. And he breaks down the act of choosing on several axes, things like mood, opportunity, and commitment. I really recommend you read this book. The cold fact is that people at home sitting in their living rooms have absolutely little desire to start making detailed choices about the video they choose to watch. TV isn't that important. If you think it is, you're taking it far too seriously. If you force choices on people when they don't want it, you create a mood mismatch between them and their devices. Let's see an example of a mood mismatch. These are the same people we saw before. Now we've taken away their traditional television, and instead we've given them a brand new free Apple TV, Roku, Boxee, Netflix, and we left them alone for a week.
Gonna try to keep an open mind, but right now I'm in a little bit of a panic that I can't find any of the shows that I normally watch.
What are you trying to watch, man?
I don't know, just find something, but I can't find anything.
Right now we're feeling like this is way more complicated than we'd like it to be. And
Apple TV, it's like you have to like make it happen. Like you have to be like, I'm gonna watch this, and like that's what I want to watch. Whereas on cable, like you turn it on, and you're like, oh, that's on. You know, I'll watch that. Like this random movie's on that I would never like seek out to watch, but I like it and it's on, so you know, I might as well watch it.
And the other thing is that like when you have cable on, it's just continuous. When I had like the shows on Netflix, it's like, okay, the show would end, and then you have to go back to the startup and like, do you want to watch the next one or whatever. It wasn't just ever continuous. So it was like you couldn't just put something on and keep it on like all day.
We're so passive TV viewers. We really want someone else to decide for us.
Right.
We can't be making all these decisions. It's too stressful.
I think TV is kind of like a passive activity. And we're trying to make it into an active thing. You know, where you pick what you want to watch.
So we can get a really detailed understanding about choice dilemmas by studying the work of this lady. This is Sheena Iyengar, And she and her colleagues at Stanford University and Columbia Business School do lots of very, very practical experiments in the area of choice, especially in areas of retail and finance, and they make a lot of money out of it by advising people what they should be doing, mostly by reducing the number of options. And I really recommend you read her research papers, but you can't rush out and read them now, so I'll summarize her 5 basic lessons. Lesson 1. When you present people with too much choice, they will often vacillate and choose not to make a choice at all, even when making no choice is against their best interests. When people are forced to choose something, they often make bad choices, generally falling back onto things which they are familiar with, or things they've chosen or experienced in the past. The bigger the pool of options to choose from, the worse people feel about the choice they made, even when you can show them the choice was the best one for them. People are more likely to stop by when you offer them a wide variety of choice, but significantly less likely to choose anything if the option pool has more than 10 items in it. And finally, people are more likely to choose and feel better about their choice if you segment the option pool into categories, even when those categories make no sense. And it's a very interesting study when she proved that the no sense point. So let's take some of these lessons and let's take some of these issues about choice and let's map them back into television and let's see what it tells us about the way people make choices on TV. So the first and the critical observation is, due to its technical history, linear TV offers no mandatory choice points at all. It never stops to ask a question like this. And if you put the remote control down, it'll just carry on forever, weaving its twinkling spell on the room. In fact, the absence of mandatory choice points is a fundamental part of the structure of traditional television. And you contrast that with the copious amount of choice points you see from other video networks, like we saw in the previous video. PVR planners, catch-up catalogues, VOD libraries, online movie rental services and such like prevent viewers with imperative choice points. You choose or nothing happens. Linear TV does not do that. In order to make the right choices, consumers have to commit time, they have to interact, read, data, process, compare, understand. Often choice is thrust on people who are not prepared for it, not wanting it. And in these cases, it's not surprising that they retrench and they do some of the things we saw Sheena describing. When we look at the viewing analytics from video networks, we see the same behavior time and again. Despite having access to thousands and thousands of movies, people bounce off the what's hot, what's new, and last chance to see lists. They are much more likely to choose things at the top of the list than the bottom of the list, on the first page than the second page, with a picture than without a picture. When you increase the number of options, you sometimes reduce the scope of choice, and people choose not to choose. When we understand the dilemma that choice brings, we can better understand the role that the familiar plays in TV. As a coping strategy, people often just watch something they've watched before. Falling back to the familiar is why reruns and repeated showings work so well on TV, and it's a mainstay of TV, especially for shows with formulaic content and very large back catalogues, or shows with very familiar actors and actresses. This comforting force, this gravitational force of the familiar, is a major driving factor in the way that people dodge choice in their homes. And how many of us have actually gone ahead and watched a show on linear TV that we stumbled across for something we already own the DVD for? In my experience, quite a few of us. And it's not just TV. There's a lot of studies to show that people only wear 10% of their wardrobe. Again, they can't be bothered to choose any beyond that. And actually, most families cycle around the same 10 meals again. That number 10 keeps cropping up over and over again until guests arrive, of course, and then they pretend they're master chefs. So linear TV is such a legacy of old tech, it's amazing to think it still survives today. What is the logic in sequencing a pre-specified order of content and then just playing it out and let people rendezvous with a random point? That's completely nuts, right? And we would never design a new system that way. But linear TV powers the mother of all use cases, which is channel zapping. Channel zapping gives users a unique ability to taste large amounts of content quickly and efficiently. It's channel zapping that allows people to stumble on content that they've never seen before, the so-called serendipity. These odd, random encounters with content are things that no recommendations engine could ever have worked out. And it's one of the major mechanisms of content discovery. Content discovery is an area that non-traditional video networks really struggle with, as you can see here. Non-linear networks require people to interact with data, to read, to understand, compare, and process. But linear TV doesn't do that. It just throws people in head first into the middle of the content. This random temporal rendezvous allows people to experience content in a way that no amount of reading of menus and synopses and ratings will do. And whilst joining content slap in the middle somewhere might not be the best place to start, it's almost always a good place to try. And it's generally better than the start, where the characters are still being established. After a lifetime of homage to the box, people can very quickly, within a few frames, understand the mood, the temperament, the genre. They can separate reality from fiction. They can look at production values. They can see country of origin. Processing and understanding moving images is part of our evolutionary heritage. It's hardwired into our brain. That's why traditional TV and channel zapping works so well. And linear TV exploits this human element of cognition by using it to neatly dissolve away all the choice points. It allows viewers to taste huge amounts of content quickly and with low commitment. And far from being outmoded, it's hard to think of a more efficient way to allow people to go through large collections of video than just throwing them into the center of it. Another choice buster is channels. As more and more content becomes available, channels become more and more important. That's because they are the major segmentation axis of television. Viewers truck up to channels for the same reason that they use the same newspapers rather than subscribe to raw news feeds. They know what they're going to get. Suddenly the options become focused by the channel ethos. They can make prejudgments about content and quality. So if you've accepted my points about reruns and linear TV and channels, you'll say, surely schedule is old. I mean, didn't we all free people from the tyranny of schedule by giving them PVRs? Haven't we at least agreed that schedule is evil? Well, schedule is easy to dismiss, but hard to ignore. PVRs don't mean that schedule goes away. In fact, schedules, channels, and linear TV exist in a trinity of choice management. They either exist together or not at all. And TV falls lockstep into the beat of people's lives. It paces out their days and their weeks. It adapts to the part of the day. News events pace out the day. Soaps and sports pace out the week. Special events pace out the year. These sort of familiar appointments with familiar shows give a temporal structure to people's time. Dismissing schedule just because PVRs exist is a blunt play. It ignores many of the choices that people are actually making in their homes. Did you know that people with PVRs and terabytes of content which they personally chose, and no recommendation engine could have done better, still spend 80% of their time watching linear television? That's what the data tells us. And another important factor in schedule has always been that TV's always been about its cutting edge, not its long wake. People like to watch shows that everybody else is watching at roughly the same time. It creates the feeling of social cohesion, and it's powered by the famous FOMO, the fear of missing out. And this trends and buzz and zeitgeist is exploited by TV, especially with their big budget live shows, their Saturday night extravaganzas. They deliberately make it hard not to watch these shows live or near live. And that's because they are targeting something called VODSL, viewed on same day as live. And that's not what happens when you dump an entire season in one go into a video catalogue, as we did with House of Cards on Netflix. I mean, a fantastic series, but did we really discuss it and anticipate it the same way we do Breaking Bad or Lost or 24? So what we've seen, these features of traditional TV are nothing to be ashamed of. They are the very factors that drive people to TV in their millions every night. They are robust, they are enduring, and that's because they punch a hole through the central dilemmas of choice. They're structural, they're systemic, they're behavioral, some of them are even cognitive. And far from hating them, we need to understand them, embrace them, and then build on them. So what are the lessons? Oh no, what is that here? So what are the key lessons? So, I'm not saying that TV won't change. Obviously, TV will change. Everything changes eventually. But when we navigate this change, we need to understand it'll happen when it proves useful in ordinary people's lives. And we need to bear some key lessons. One is we need to focus on people before technology. Project what you're doing into the homes of ordinary people, not into your own homes. Seek out what utility it brings to those people in their day-to-day lives. Use data rather than hunches. When you look for it, you'll find useful data all over the place. Buy data if you haven't got it. That's what we did in NI. I bought lots of it. See what it tells you. Generate your own data. Invite people to come and use them. Put them in their homes. See what they're doing with it. And finally, understand that TV will evolve. There will be no revolution. It will evolve. Don't believe the hype put out by the other Californian tech giants. They're on the outside trying to break into the mainstream of TV. Obviously, they will preach a mantra of revolution. We are on the inside. We are part of the mainstream. It's beholden on us to understand TV in much more detail, to understand why it works, how it works, and to have a much more clear understanding of what the future will bring. So time's out, so I'm just going to leave you with some closing words, not of my own, but of the same subscribers you saw earlier. But now the week has gone by, they've got their traditional TV back.
I feel really good about Comcast.
I think we'd be happy with just going back to our regular cable. It meets most of our needs.
I don't see myself getting rid of like DirecTV or cable anytime soon.
I'm glad we tried it. I'm glad I got to see what technology is out there. But at this point, for my household, I still need cable.
Is cable worth $1,200 a year?
Yeah.
Thank you.